What's going on, people? My name is Batman, and Evolve is the first game that I've played in a very, very long time that genuinely does not make any effort in any way whatsoever to dumb itself down in an effort to appeal to the more casual masses. And I don't mean to come off as an elitist. I really don't have anything against people who play games casually. In a lot of ways, I think for most of us in the beginning of our gaming careers, that's what games were for primarily, casual entertainment, right? But not this game. And that's the point I want to drive home. This is not the casual entertainment game. And so if you're curious as to whether or not you would like this game, you need to first ask what kind of gamer you really are. You know, I consider myself a pretty experienced gamer. Most games I can dive into, whether it was Far Cry 4, Shadow of Mordor, or Battlefield Hardline, or Halo 5, or whatever, and essentially master them within a few hours of gameplay. Mostly because a lot of the mechanics you encounter in these new games are variations of a mechanic you've already spent an extensive amount of time with, right? Like if you played Fallout 3 and Far Cry 3, you'll pick up Far Cry 4 pretty easily. If you've played a lot of Assassin's Creed, you'll pick up Shadow of Mordor pretty easily. If you played Call of Duty and Halo 3, you'll pick up Halo 5 pretty easily. Because I played Gears of War and Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, I was able to get past the Mass Effect learning curve very quickly. I talked about this with Destiny, how I felt like the skills I developed using the radar and the shotgun in Halo carried over to the radar and the shotgun in Destiny. The skills you develop in video games will often carry over to other video games. It's like muscle memory. But because of that, games start to become less and less challenging. And that means they are less and less rewarding. And also less and less interesting because they start to feel less and less new. That was my complaint with the Halo 5 beta, right? It wasn't a bad game, it's just that I've been there, done that. Sprint, ADS, booster thrust. There wasn't anything that I felt was genuinely new after the first hour of gameplay. And that's why I ultimately made that video talking about how I think games need more innovation. Well, Evolve is very innovative, and exactly what I was talking about when I say I want a new experience, something fresh and exciting that I haven't done before. But there's a catch, and the catch is that Evolve was the first time in a long time I genuinely felt naked. Like every mechanic in the game was foreign to me. I felt like a noob. When I was the monster, I didn't know how to get away from the hunters for long enough to evolve. When I was the humans, I didn't know how to find the monster or catch up to it when I did briefly see it. I spent many matches aimlessly wandering around, getting shit on, and getting frustrated. You hear me talk a lot about how I want that new experience in gaming, how I do want to do something genuinely new, how I feel like a lot of games these days are just repackaging the same mechanics and calling it new when it's not. Evolve provides that fresh experience that I've been craving, that I don't think has been seen in any game in a while, or at least none that I've played, and I've played a lot. And Evolve is truly an original experience. Very few games can make that claim today. And because of that, it's a lot of fun, and I want to elaborate on what makes it fun, but I think it's important that you first understand the learning curve is steep, the skill gap is high. When you first start, there will be times when the hunters overwhelm you and you get destroyed, and you don't even know what you were supposed to do differently. They have good tutorials to get you started, but once you're in that match, there's no hand-holding, and I think a lot of players are going to get really frustrated trying to get through that first 10 hours of gameplay where you have to learn the game, because the cold hard truth is this is the kind of game where you have to get shit on a few times before you get good. And there's a certain type of masochistic player that this will appeal to, kind of like how a game like Dark Souls gets so popular specifically because of how challenging it is. This is somewhere along those lines. It's not as challenging, not at all the same type of gameplay, but something to be enjoyed for the challenge, the experience of that challenge, and the relative enjoyment you can derive out of a genuinely new experience. Even after you've mastered the basics, each character and every monster has its own learning curve where you have to learn how to take advantage of certain abilities and what their strengths and weaknesses are and how to combat them or how to use them when you're playing as them. And I would imagine that most of you, like me, haven't played a game that had mechanics similar to this. And I'm sure there will be someone who can point out, oh, well, it's kind of like this game or it's kind of like that game. I'm going to bet that the vast majority of you have not encountered most of these mechanics before. And that makes starting a new game a much more challenging experience. Like if you go from any FPS to any other FPS, you will already have the controls down and you will already have a basic understanding of most of the game modes. But that just isn't the case for Evolve. And Evolve is technically an FPS in the sense that you are in the first person and shooting things, but that's where similarities with any other FPS stop. Your reaction times, ADS times, your ability to manage recoil, your gunfighting skills in general aren't going to make much of a difference in these fights. It's not about understanding spawns or anything like that. Very few of your skills from COD, Halo, Battlefield, Far Cry, or whatever will translate into this first-person experience. What it really comes down to is your decision-making process, logical deduction, and inferencing the truth from evidence like a fucking detective. If you're a monster, you have to decide which human character to kill first, and that's going to be very different depending on the situation. For instance, in a standard fight, you have to kill the medic first, but if you're stuck in a mobile arena, you have to kill the trapper first. If you're trying to take out the power core, you want to kill the assault guy first, because then the rest rest of the team won't be able to kill you before you kill the core. And then the same applies in reverse to the humans, right? Like, which abilities should you be using in what situations? For instance, I got caught in this shitty situation where I was playing as medic, and we had the monster at really low health, and it was about to run away because our mobile arena, which traps it in a certain area, had just got down because the trapper had gone down. But I had a friend, that trapper, who was down, and I was the only one close enough to save him because we already had one guy fully KIA. He was up in the dropship up in space, and the other motherfucker was too far away. So I had two options: pursue the monster and keep hitting it with tranq darts to slow it down long enough for my other buddy to catch up and we could maybe finish it off, or revive my teammate and the monster would get away. I revived my teammate, and later on I regretted that decision because the monster escaped, evolved to level 3, and went on to win the game. And there are a lot of moments like that, a lot of high stress but exciting moments, where you look back and think, man, if I had just done, this one thing differently, maybe we would have won the game right there. And that kind of makes it exciting. It's a very drawn out match, and the implications of every action ripple throughout the match and affect its ultimate outcome. But you often can't tell what effect it will have until the very end. And it's very different from other shooters I've played in the sense that you really don't know who's going to win until someone finally does win. Like in most multiplayer games, halfway through a match, I know who's going to win. But in Evolve, it keeps you on your feet and guessing and competing the whole time. And a big part of the gameplay also revolves around your ability to concoct creative tactical maneuvers. There's a lot of room for creativity in this game. Your ability to employ those creative tactical maneuvers successfully. It's almost a bit of a sandbox, which I love. There are a lot of ways for various character skills to interact with the skills of another character. A bunch of different combinations, 3 characters in each class. I'm not a math guy, but there's 12 characters total. Each one of them is going to have some cool way to interact with the other classes. Some cool combination of their abilities you can set up. Setting up harpoon traps next to a mine. That's like the most basic version of it, right? So it locks the monster in place briefly so he gets hit by the mine or what have you. Finding creative ways for character skills to interact and hurt the monster in unique ways. And that's something I found very fun, is sandboxing it up. And that's not something you'll find in a lot of competitive multiplayer games these days. Battlefield has a little bit of sandbox, like putting C4 on your motorcycle to turn it into a giant bomb, or like in Hardline, putting the ammo box on the back of your car so it refills your ammo without having to get out of the car. Halo 3 had a bit of sandbox, but like nowadays, Call of Duty, Halo 4, Halo 5, Destiny, Titanfall, they all have zero sandbox potential. Because the thing about sandboxy gameplay is that it makes for a higher and higher skill gap as more and more people figure out creative ways to take advantage of the sandbox. So the opportunity to use your creativity competitively today is basically non-existent in most competitive multiplayer settings because they are worried about the skill gap, whereas this game does not give a fuck about the skill gap. And I compare it to these other popular shooters not because they have much in common in terms of gameplay, but because they are competitive multiplayer experiences, right? Evolve is for gamers who are interested in competitive multiplayer, in pitting their mental abilities against that of another human being, but doing so in a new format that allows for new types of gameplay that are not presently available in any of those other competitive multiplayer shooters where you might try to quench that same kind of urge. So for example, some of the creative ways I was able to take advantage of the sandbox tactics in Evolve, and this is just like in the first 3 days, there are these AI monsters around the map who have a special symbol above their head which signals that they have an extra perk or buff that you can get if you kill them. You suck it out of them, I guess you eat them or whatever. So we killed one and took its buff, but the thing is, if the monster finds that corpse of the buff AI monster you killed, he can eat it for a buff too. So we didn't know where the motherfucker was, but we did know he was wounded. We got into a fight with him earlier. So what I did was placed a bunch of mines around the AI buff monster we had just killed, just in case he did come and try to pick up this buff. And then as we were searching for him a few minutes later, we randomly win the game because he tried to get the buff and ran into all my mines and got killed. And it was just one of those epic as fuck moments where you're laughing hella hard and feeling like a fucking badass because you outsmarted the guy. This other time, we were defending the power core at the end of the match. We saw the monster scare some birds like 200 meters away, so we kind of knew which direction he would come from. So we had the trapper set up a bunch of harpoon traps, which like sticks the monster to the ground and the monster has to break them to keep moving. He set these harpoon traps up like every 5 meters in a straight line to the core. I set my mines up in between each trap, and then when the monster did come, he was getting caught on each trap, hitting each mine, and then because he was getting slowed down by all that, our support character was able to call in a mortar strike on the motherfucker, and the medic was all hitting it with tranq darts and shit, and we killed a full health level 3 monster in like 30 seconds, and it was just such a rush, and you can't really understand it unless you know how hard it is to kill a level 3 monster, but it was just really sick, and we had these creative strategies that we developed and executed, and it was a lot of fun. And then as the monster, because you know the humans can see your footsteps, you can use that to your advantage to fuck with them, like running right through a Venus flytrap, which is a giant plant that eats the humans. Or what I did this one time, which I thought was really clever, I killed one of those AI monsters I was talking about with the stat buffs, and I knew they would follow my footsteps directly to the buff, and then they would, if one person found the buff, they would all sort of come to it to get it to congregate around it. So I went into sneak mode and hid in the fucking bushes right next to the thing I killed, and then when they came for it, I sneak attacked the medic, which is like an insta-kill, because when you get that sneak attack, it's like a critical, right? It really damages the guy. And then after he was down, I corpse fucked the medic a little bit so that he can't get revived, because once they're down, you know, you have to sort of kick them while they're down so that their teammates can't revive them. You have to like fully kill them. Then I went after the assault guy, and because they had no medic, they were basically screwed, and the other two tried to run away while I was, you know, corpse fucking the assault character to make sure he couldn't get revived. And I hunted down one more of those guys, and I was feeling really exhilarated, and I had like the adrenaline rushing because I just killed 3 of them. I totally ambushed them. They had no idea what was going on. But then I couldn't find that last one, unfortunately. He was able to stay long enough for his friends to respawn in on the dropship, and they eventually won. But I almost won using a really neat tactic, and it was really exhilarating. And this game is really, really good at getting your adrenaline flowing, you know what I mean? And I guarantee that medic player shit their pants when I first sneak attacked them. Even for that player, the medic, like that was an experience you probably couldn't get in most other games. Just, you know, genuinely having the shit scared out of you. It's just a lot of fun. There's a lot of adrenaline and moments of suspense and absolute terror and really intense battles. When all 4 of you are fighting the monster, he's level 3, it's that final showdown. It's a really intense fight. And the other thing that I think is unique about this game is that you really do want a challenge. It's not fun to play a stupid monster. It can kind of sometimes be fun as a monster to play against stupid humans if you go and beat the shit out of them at level 1, but generally it's a very different mindset from other FPSs where you want to steamroll motherfuckers. Like Halo, COD, Battlefield, whatever, you typically don't mind when the enemy team is a bunch of morons because you get to just beat up on them and steamroll them. Like the only time people really mind when the enemy team sucks is if it slows down the pace of the match, like on Battlefield if the entire enemy team gets trapped in their spawn or what have you. But like in Destiny and COD, the stupider the enemy, the better. And some people may say I'm wrong about that, but if I really was wrong, the competitive playlist they put in COD and Halo and whatever else would be a lot more popular than they ever are, just saying, and people would like skill-based matchmaking a lot more than they do. But this game, you want smart enemies, you want that challenge, because the smarter they are, the more creative stuff they do, the more intense and exciting the experience becomes. You want the challenge, you want the competitive atmosphere, and that kind of speaks to what this game is about in general. I don't think it is meant for casual, laid-back gameplay, and in fact, if you play the match casually, you'll get shit on. Like, you really need to be in the moment and aggressively doing everything you can as fast as you can to win. If you casually stroll around, you know, laughing it up, kind of having fun in a laid-back atmosphere, you will get fucked up. And there will be a lot of people who argue that the game is boring and repetitive. But I would bet that a lot of that has to do with not finding competitive enough matches, because the non-competitive matches do kind of suck, and that's a problem that maybe they should try to find a workaround. I'm not sure what that workaround would be from the developer standpoint, but especially in the early stages of the game when most people have no idea what they're doing, I think this will be a problem. But I think this game will actually be at its best when the population has died off a little bit and people have gotten a lot better and the people left on the game are all pretty skilled at it and know what they're doing. The only criticism I have of this game, and I don't know if it counts as a criticism because I kind of empathize with them on this, but Evolve will suffer from the same kind of problem Titanfall suffered from. They have the core experience down, but it does need to be expanded on. I think most of the maps kind of all blur together. They don't really stand out in any way. You have like the cool Venus flytrap plant that will kill you if you get close enough, but they need more than just one plant. Or maybe not a plant, but they need more than just one standard environmental mechanism that does that. You know, just in general, they need more variations of each mechanic, if that makes sense. Because just like Titanfall, it kind of does all blur together regardless of the game type or the map you're on. And the core experience is a lot of fun, but ultimately it's the diversity that provides longevity for a game. And I think in the long run, it might have a longevity problem like Titanfall did. Like Titanfall was super, super fun, but then it kind of got old after a while just because there wasn't a lot of diversity in the experience. But I'm sure that's for the same reason as it was in Titanfall, and that is when you're building a game from scratch, you have to spend most of that time designing and refining that original core experience. And that's why I suspect both those games had to use the sort of awkward multiplayer campaign mode because they didn't have enough time for an actual campaign. Though I will say Evolve did it much better than Titanfall. You actually understand the general premise of the story, and basically the more matches you win in the early stages of the campaign, the stronger you'll be in the final epic clash at the end of the campaign, where the monster gets like mini monster minions to back him up. So it all ties together in a nice way, and your actions actually have an effect on the outcome of the campaign. And it's kind of like I was talking about, you really don't know who's going to win the war till that final clash. Whereas in Titanfall's multiplayer campaign, nothing really mattered whether you won or lost. It affected nothing. You still went to the same levels afterwards. You still got to unlock the Titan for doing the campaign or whatever. Titanfall's campaign was kind of a joke. The multiplayer campaign in Evolve is not as pathetic as the one in Titanfall. Evacuation was actually a lot of fun. But like, if you look at the first ever COD or Battlefield, they didn't have a third of the content they have today. You know, over time the franchise has been able to expand upon its core design. Evolve hasn't had that opportunity to evolve, right? I think what we're seeing with games like Evolve and Titanfall is the birth of a new generation of games, but those games aren't going to be able to realize their full potential until they've had more time to grow. So at the end of the day, this is an excellent, high quality and innovative game, but it's not necessarily for everyone, and I know that it will never receive the same widespread love and affection that other, even lesser games do. But I don't think that was ever the developer's intention. I think they had a very specific goal going into this game to cater to a very select group of gamers. Like, you know, the vast majority of gamers generally play video games to relax, to have fun, you know, hang out with your friends, smoke a bowl, play some 10-minute Call of Duty matches, in between casually browse some Reddit porn. And I'm not hating on casual gamers. I was a casual gamer too back in high school, back when gaming was the only brief respite I had from the constant and overwhelming depression of waking up each day to take part in a system whose very existence was offensive to my every waking moment. Casual gaming is oftentimes a necessity for the oppressed generations of the 21st century, but at a certain point, the casual gamer evolves. As we play more and more games, as we overcome each new challenge, acclimate to each new set of rules, and acquire new sets of skills, skill sets that quite often carry over to each successive game that we play, we start to adapt to the games faster than they can adapt to us. We get too good. If the satisfaction in accomplishment is derived from overcoming an obstacle, then soon we realize that the games we are playing are no longer challenging. If you've played 10 Call of Duty campaigns, the 11th isn't going to stump you. And the same is true for Battlefield and Halo and that other game and the one before that and its carbon copy clone they call a sequel. And you begin to realize that you are no longer overcoming new challenges, you are no longer accomplishing things, you are going through the motions, just like you were in high school. And as soon as you recognize the redundancy of your efforts, the matrix fails, the system collapses. And when the system does fail, you are left with no choice but to evolve. A month from now, you will hear people say that this game is dead, that nobody is talking about it, that nobody they know is playing it. That is because they fail to understand that it was never meant to be an inclusive club that everyone could join. It was always meant to be the Dead Poet Society, meeting alone in the dark of night. Please rate the video. This is Batman signing out.